Hi, and welcome everyone to the Modern Endpoint Management Summit 2022. It's nice to see so many attendees. Now, I was moderator on a session called Windows Policy Management through Intune that Per Larsen, a product manager from Microsoft, held. And that is a good session to go watch if you want some more information about Intune configuration profiles and the many ways of configuring. So this session is going to be about how to transition GPOs to Intune configuration profiles. Now, we've been given a feature and we are going to look into that, and we have real-world examples for you. So first, I want to thank all sponsors for making this possible. This is a global event with more than 8,000 attendees, and we've tried to make the impossible. It's not possible, but to have some sessions that fit into your time zone. That's why we also record the session, so you can go and watch it on demand. If you want to ask questions, and you definitely should, then please do that in the Q&A. Otherwise, have fun, chat in the regular chat. And then during I am speaking, I have Sune with me that is going to moderate the chat. So let's start with this session. So thank you again, sponsors, for making this possible. Now, about me, I've been in a company called Minecore since 2020. I've been in the business for 17 years, and I am working with client management. So that's typically Config Manager and Microsoft Intune and everything in between. Mostly actually transition projects. My absolutely smallest customer is 100 users. My largest customers is about 55,000 devices. So normally I can be found on LinkedIn under the official contributor in the Modern Endpoint Management group. And also I can be found on Twitter under the name Melkersen. And yeah, over to you, Sune.
Yes, thank you, Mattias. Hello, everyone. My name is Sune Thomsen, and I work as a senior consultant at Minecore, just like Mattias. I'm a Microsoft MVP in Windows and devices for IT category. And I'm an official contributor in the Modern Endpoint Management group on LinkedIn and in the Windows 365 community. I've been working in the IT industry for 17 years, and a few of my key areas at the moment are Microsoft Endpoint Manager, Configuration Manager, and Windows 365 Cloud PC. So with that said, back to you, Mattias. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sune, for that. And let's start by the agenda here. Now, we need to go into the helicopter. We need to know why we do it and what is the path to actually go through such a transition. Now, we also need to look at all the practical stuff. How do we do it, and what do we need? Then, of course, we have GPOs. Everyone has GPOs that has an on-prem system. We need the practical, how do we analyze these GPOs? Then we're going to look at Intune configuration profiles. There's a lot of possibilities here. And what are we going to use, and why are we going to use it? And then last, we have Sune going through a live demo where he's going to transition GPOs into Microsoft Intune. So simple. So how about now we go to the cloud? Should we migrate stuff. There is many reasons not to, because it is a new system or environment, you could say. It's a good way to say, okay, I want to start fresh. So why don't you do that? Well, many companies already spend a lot of time building GPOs. And I also see a lot of companies that actually know and have control over their GPOs. They actually manage it quite well. So it's not just a bunch of forgotten GPOs through the last 20 years. So if we want to have a transition where we just don't do a big bang and we want to have a smooth transition without having our users to find out that we do it, then this analyze of GPO, it would be a good thing to do, and smoothly, and do it in small steps. So this is how we are going to do it. So why should I move my GPOs? Well, for starters, we have a better reach, and we can add the policy to our device over the internet. Now, if you have our GPO, that is not possible because we need line of sight to that domain controller. We have better reporting. In GPOs, is it possible to get report back from the client? Not from a central perspective, right? You have to go to the client and have a GP result, and then you can actually have the result of the GPOs applied, right? So how about Intune? Well, that utilizes the MDM engine, and the MDM engine is actually fitted so you can have a response back to tell you that the policy actually applied. Or maybe there was a conflict. I would like to know that. So that's why it is better on reporting. Another reason not to use GPOs, it's old tech. But okay, come on, old tech works, and if it works, then why do anything about it? Well, if we are going to leverage, for example, autopilot, now our recommendation is that you don't go AD joint devices or hybrid joint devices. The best way and the best the experience of autopilot is Azure AD joint devices only. So if you have Azure AD only devices, then your GPOs won't apply to them. So I want to show you just a little bit from the portal here. If we go to the Intune portal and we go to reports and we go to endpoint analytics, we have something called proactive remediation. Now here in proactive remediation, we actually have a standard built-in from Microsoft that is update stale group policy. And guess what that does? It actually going to remediate if your GPO engine is failing or your device is not getting GPOs. So the engine is also better, maybe. I don't know. I haven't repaired a MDM engine yet. So my experience as well is that the MDM is more stable. Now, we don't need to maintain any ADMX files. You know as well as I, when we release a new Windows, or Microsoft release a new Windows, we also have to put in new ADMX files to our central storage. Otherwise, we won't be able to control these new features put into the new feature of Windows. In Microsoft Intune, we don't have to do that because we have actually Microsoft people doing that for us. So in a collaboration between the MEM team and the Windows team, they are going to fit this into the portal. So we as admins can just use it. Many of you are maybe aware of how you ingested this as a custom CSP. For example, if you wanted to set Google Chrome policies through Microsoft Intune, that was a ingestion of the MDMX so that the device could understand certain policies. Now, that is not needed anymore because we have settings catalog. So we are much faster on actually getting on with our policies. apply policies faster? Well, when we are in this hybrid work world, typically you would have a VPN to access all kind of on-prem stuff. But this processing of GPOs actually slow down your device, because going through a VPN to your domain controller, have GPOs to apply to your device, that's just a slow process. And now I've heard people or customers saying, we can't go Azure AD Join. We need our GPOs. So we're going to have autopilot leveraged, and we're going to do it hybrid. And I'm like, don't do it. It's too complex. Create those policies in Intune and do it the right way. Okay. Now, for starters, when you want insight and what you actually can save of time and optimize on your clients, in the most environment I work, there is already a config manager. And what we tend to do is to enable tenant attach as a cloud attachment. So we can leverage the endpoint analytics insight for our devices. That way, we can actually have these insights to say, okay, in our environment, how many devices and how many seconds could I, in average, actually save if I dropped my GPOs? Now, that is a good measurement for the management people to see, okay, this is a huge impact if we actually remove this. I can see why you want to do it, and I'm going to give you the money to build this for the company. So that's a good way to say, hey, management, we need time, we need money to actually move towards more modern approaches. So what do we need in order to have this going on? Well, for starters, we need Microsoft Endpoint Manager, and that is a huge surprise for you. No, of course, it is not. So we need access as well in the Intune portal. And if you are not Intune administrator, you could have a role-based access where you have the permission to see security baselines. Then you would also be able to leverage the GP analytics. Now you need access and proper permission to the group policy management, and that is on-prem. You also need to be able to save GPOs as a XML format. And you want to be sure that when you export these XML files, they are less than 4 megabytes and you have the proper Unicode encoding. Now, if your XML files exceed 4 megabytes, maybe you have too many policies in the same group policy. But hey, that's your problem. So if we look at this transition now from your on-prem GPOs into the cloud, the first step you need to do is to analyze your current structure. You need to get overview of what you have currently. And then you need to spread out the responsibility. If you are a very small organization, you are going to manage that yourself. If you're a very big organization, you're going to need help because you definitely weren't the one that implemented all that GPO into the business. So reach out, get help, and maybe create some sort of Excel spreadsheet where you put in all these policies and responsibilities. The next thing you need to do is you need to be hard on your cleanup. Be critical when you do the cleanup. Do we really need these policies in the cloud? I mean, micromanagement in a cloud product that is not a fit. If you want micromanagement, stay in your on-prem system. You can manage whatever you want with Config Manager. You can nitty-gritty with your task sequence. You can change the start menu. You can do all that nice stuff that makes you so satisfied. But when you go to the cloud, Don't micromanagement. Do the security that you need and let Windows be Windows. And of course, if Candy Crush is there, remove it. Import your XML to the Intune DP Analytics. Now, we're going to see that actually when Sune is going to go through his demo. And from that, you are going to see which of your policies on-prem is actually able to go to the cloud. So you get a percentage from 0 to 100, and that is quite nice, actually. The next thing, and is very, very important, is to build a standard. You know this stuff from building GPOs. You have this proper standard where these are going to users, these are going to devices. You put it and link it on this OU, etc., etc., etc. It's no different in Intune. You need to build your standards, and our strategy is typically to build some sort of what is this policy doing? So give it a name. It could be that you are doing or leveraging a couple of security settings. It could be that this setting is for OneDrive, or this is for delivery optimization. Give it proper naming, and then also put in device or user into the naming standards so you know where this is going to be assigned. If you listen to Pierre Larsen's session, he also told you how the scopes of the CSP that are underneath this cloud policy, where it goes, either it goes to the computer scope, right? The device scope, or the user scope. So it's very important to plan this and make it right from the beginning. So the transition of the Intune or the policies to Intune. Now, you've done all of that. You've done the standard. You've done the analysis of your group policies. Now you need to implement it. And at the last, you need to test your scenarios. You have a scenario where you have your hybrid state of devices. That means you have still your GPOs applying to this device. And suddenly you also have Intune policies coming down to the device. So you need some kind of way to say, okay, does my device act like I want it to act while in that hybrid state? The other thing you need to test is as well, because the hybrid state is not a end station, it is a transition period, right? So your end station is Azure AD only. So you also need a device where you can test that, so you don't have the GPO to maybe conflict to your Intune policy. You can also bring in some help that calls MDM wins over GP, where you can actually block a policy that is the same configured in GPO and in Intune, so that you have Intune winning over the GPO and blocking that policy. That's a good strategy as well. All right. So now we have the transition. Now we need to know where I'm going to put these policies. We have so many places where we could add it. And our number one is Endpoint Security. Endpoint Security is the place to place all the security settings that you have, if they are in that blade. Sometimes we see that we lack the possibility to set the policy, and we have to go into one of the other configurations. But that's how it is. Sometimes the settings are not there, and we have to go back to some other way to set the policy. That's how it is. The next one is Settings Catalog, and that is quite new. It's still in preview. Now, the benefit of using Settings Catalog is that you have all the settings and you can search. Settings Catalog apply to almost all of the platforms that are supported inside of Intune. Now, the benefit is also the reporting, which is kind of brand new, and the thing that you can duplicate. And I'm going to show you that, because the duplicate feature is a killer feature when we are discussing operational tasks of Microsoft Intune. For example, if I have a custom policy here, if I right-click it, I can only delete it. Now, if I go to a settings catalog, I can right-click and I can set it duplicate. And this is my new policy. And if I refresh it, I have my new policy. That makes it very easy to operate because I don't want to change a policy that is already in production. I want to copy that, test it on some new devices that I have, and make sure that my policy do not ruin anything in my environment. And then I roll it out as a ring rollout. The next one to use, the number 3 on our list, is administrative templates. Now, if you are a GPO administrator, using administrative templates might seem as a very good idea because it really looks similar to something you've seen in the on-prem world. But I'll tell you that use settings catalog if you can. Administrative templates, it's good, but settings catalog is more agile, and it's better for the clients in regards to handle changes when you update the policies, etc. Number 4 on our list is templates. Now, the standard templates we know from back in time, once that settings catalog wasn't in the portal. Templates was built by the MEM team. So you could say it could take some time for a policy to actually get into the portal. And yeah, with the settings catalog and the collaboration with the Windows team, things are going so much easier, and the UI are following very, very well along with the features. The last resort is a custom CSP. Now, as I told you, if you wanted before to ingest ADMX files, that could typically be the Google Chrome. If you wanted to manage that, you could do that leveraging custom CSP, and then afterwards set a very, very long list of policies. We don't have to do that anymore. We have Google Chrome in settings catalog and as well in administrative templates. Now, what is great by using the endpoint security is that if we have a Azure role, I'm talking about role-based access here, you can actually give that responsibility to your SecOps division. That means if you're a security administrator in Azure, you actually have the possibility to set policies inside Intune in this area. So typically, if you are a larger organization, the client management team is not the same as the SecOps team. And you would say, okay, you go ahead and set the policies that you need on the clients to comply with the security settings of this company. Yeah, so basically, now that we have the endpoint security, use it, because we also have other very good initiatives. And that is, it's not only MDM managed devices that we can reach with our policies here. If you are one of the lucky customers that are using Defender for Endpoint, the MDE, then you can actually onboard your device to Defender for Endpoint and then leverage antivirus policies through the Intune portal and to the client. Yes, you don't have to manage the device in Intune to leverage policies for antivirus, for example. So how does that work? Because suddenly the world opens up. We cannot enroll servers into Intune, right? We can only have clients. Now, if we can put policies on MDE managed devices that does not need to be in Intune, suddenly we are able to leverage policies to our servers, at least antivirus and firewall settings. So that's why it's in there and it's great to use. The other feature is the tenant attach, which is a what you could say leverage the cloud attachment from your config manager on-prem system. So what we do here is that when you set a policy, it will travel down to your config manager and through the config manager agent on your devices. That is also a way of leveraging policies. So that's why endpoint security is so strong. It's not only Intune managed devices. About the settings catalog and the reporting, now you see why. It's very easy to search for whatever setting you need. And the reporting of your settings catalog is also awesome. There was recently a change to Microsoft Intune where all these cake diagrams, I call it cake diagrams, these donuts, changed to this reporting engine. So we've been lucky to have changed that, because the old report engine, let's be honest, it sucked. So this one it's more what you could say reliant. So really happy to have that here now. And now we want to have Sune demoing a little bit for us. Sune, take it away.
Thank you, Mattias. Let me just see. Do I have? So I have control. Okay. Yeah. So I have the honor of showing you a quick demo on how to use group policy analytics as part of the GPO to Intune transition. But before I switch over to my demo, I would like to highlight the topics that we will be taking a closer look at. And okay, there was a little bit of a delay right there. Okay, so the first thing that we will take a look at is export GPOs as XML files. And I will show you how to export GPOs from my domain controller and which options we have available to achieve that. Let me just go back. There's a bit of a delay, sorry. Next up is that I will show you how to import the GPOs to the group policy analytics in Intune. And once imported, we will look at the analyzed data and the group policy migration readiness report. Finally, we will look at how to clean up by using a script for bulk deletion of the imported GPOs. With that said, let me try and share my screen. Mattias, maybe you would let me know when you can see it.
Sure, Sune. We see it.
Can you see my screen? Okay. So I have already connected to my domain controller. And from here, I will show you a couple of options on how to export GPOs as XML files. From the group policy management, I have already prepared a OU called demo. I have linked a few GPOs to that OU. Those GPOs are link enabled. We have a couple of options how to export the GPOs as XML files. The first option is to make a backup of the GPO. We can actually select multiple GPOs and perform a backup. It will create a folder for each GPO with a report within each of those folders. But for this demo, I would just create a backup of the GPO called BitLogger. And we achieve that by right-clicking on the GPO and select backup. We provide it with a location where it should store the backup, and we click backup and OK. Let's verify that it has actually created the backup. I will go to my export folder and go to my backup folder. You can see it has created a folder based on a GUID, and within that folder, we have our report. It is called gpreport.xml. This is the report that you want to import to Group Policy Analytics in Intune. Option number 2 is that we can save the GPO as a report. And the benefit of that is that it will provide us with a user-friendly name instead of just gpreport.xml. So, and to achieve that, let's try to save the delivery optimization GPO here as a report. Right-click on it and select Save Report. And you can see that it gives it a familiar name. It is the name of the GPO. What you need to be aware of here is that you would go to save as, change the save as type from, you want to change that from HTML file to XML file. And let's verify that we have saved that report. And there we have it. Okay, so the third option is to use PowerShell. So imagine that we have hundreds of GPOs that we need to export. You probably only want those that are linked to a OU and enabled. In this example, I will export my Windows 10 customization GPO. Let me show you how to achieve that. So I have my PowerShell and I have the script already open. And this small PowerShell script, I have added my root of my domain. I have narrowed it down to my demo OU, and I have provided a search criteria, which is Windows 10. If I run this, we should now have exported that Windows 10 customization, and we have. We could leave this search criteria empty, and that should export all the GPOs that are linked to the demo OU and that are enabled. And it has done that. So now that we have exported all our GPOs to XML files, let's move over to the Microsoft Endpoint Manager and import it to the Group Policy Analytics. So here we have Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center, and we will find Group Policy Analytics by going to Devices, and right here in the Policy area, we have Group Policy Analytics. So I have already imported my group policies, and I have done that to save a little bit of time in this demo because, okay, so the import itself does not take that long. It takes only a few seconds to complete. But in the background, the Group Policy Analytics will process all the data and create or generate the report for the migration readiness report. And that can actually take up to 20 minutes when adding and removing policies from the Group Policy Analytics. So once we have imported, let me just show you how to import it. Click on the import, browse for your files, select the files, click open, and if everything goes well, it will be imported in a matter of seconds. Once imported, the GPO name will be listed in the group policy name column. Let's talk a little bit about the column. So we have the MDM supported column. This will show you the percentage of the supported settings in each GPO. Then we have the unknown settings column. This will list all the settings that cannot be analyzed by the group policy analytics. For example, registry settings, scheduled tasks, services, etc. Then we have the column called targeted in AD. It just means that the group policy, if that's set to yes, that means that the group policy is linked to an OU in the on-prem AD. It might be worth mentioning that currently the group policy analytics provides us with the import and the analysis features. But Microsoft has announced that in a future release, we will be able to create policy based on our imported GPOs and then apply them or deploy them, sorry. Now, if I would take a look at the settings within my imported group policy, I need to go to the MDM support and click on the percentage. All the settings will then be listed in the settings name column. And then we have the column called group policy settings category. This is actually the settings category that we know from the ADMX template in group policy. Then we have the MDM support. This shows us if this specific setting is supported in Intune or not. If we scroll down, we can see we have a few settings that are not supported. If we had settings that were deprecated, it will also show here. Then we have a column called value. Yeah, you guessed it. It's the value of the settings. And then we have the minimum OS version that the settings applies to. We have the CSP name, and then we have the CSP mapping. The CSP mapping is the OMAURI path that you can use to create a custom device configuration profile. Then we also have the option to do a little bit of filtering, and we can export the content to a CSV file for further analysis. So if we want a report with all the settings from all our imported GPOs, we will take a look at the migration readiness report. We will find the migration readiness report we will find in the reports area. And here in the device management, we will find policy management or the policy analytics. And we have a tab called reports, and we click on group policy migration readiness. From here, we can export report based on all the imported settings, or we can filter based on the readiness for migration, the not supported or deprecated. Let's try and generate a report based on all the settings that are ready for migration. We can also filter on the profile type and the CSP name. And we also have the ability to add a few more columns. For instance, we are missing the CSP name and the CSP mapping in this view down here. And we have the ability to export the report for further analysis. For instance, we could import it to our own Excel spreadsheet for further analysis. And here we go, we have a report based on the settings that are ready for migration. Now, once we have analyzed all the data and we have completed the GPO to Intune transition, we will probably like to clean up at some point. And as for now, the only option that we have available in the web portal is that we can delete each single GPO. That's not a problem if we only have a few GPOs to delete or clean up. But what if we had, let's say, hundreds of GPOs imported? It would then turn out to be a much more comprehensive task to carry out, right? So I gathered some information or inspiration from the community and came up with a few sample scripts that will perform a bulk deletion based on either a keyword or just everything. So let me show you. I have my PowerShell window here with the script already opened. Let me just check that I'm still connected to the MS Graph. It look like that. Okay, so let me take this sample. I have already provided a search criteria, which is BitLocker. So this should delete all the group policies with the BitLocker within its name. Let's see what happens when I run this selection. And I go back to the web portal and click refresh. The BitLocker is gone. Okay, let's try and run the next sample. This should just delete everything. So let's try and run that selection. And we try to click refresh again. And now everything is gone. So we have basically just cleaned up everything. What have we achieved in this demo? Well, we have exported GPOs to XML files. We have imported the GPOs to group policy analytics. And we have looked at the analyzed data per group policy and in a migration readiness report. And then we have done some cleanup afterwards. That concludes this demo, and I hope it gave you some inspiration on how to go about such a transition. I believe the scripts used in this demo will be available in a GitHub repository after our event. And back to you, Mattias.
Thank you very much, Sune. I think you did a great job demoing the real-world example on how to transition GPOs. So very soon we will be able to actually migrate these settings that you just showed inside the GP Analytics engine. So we'll have a migrate button. And when we use Microsoft Intune, I recommend that you go into the developer site and look into what's coming. And we also have a session a little bit later with a VP for all the program managers on the endpoint where we have a roadmap. So go listen to Steve, he is awesome. But for this analytics here, when we get this migrate button, it's going to be so much easier for the administrator to actually migrate these policies. And what I'm saying here is not doing it one-to-one. Don't do it. But the thing is, you can hand pick your policies. So if you have already set them on-prem and you have spent the time doing what you just did, Sune, you can handpick and migrate these policies without having to do this manually. So I'm very much looking forward to this announcement to actually get into the product. And with that said, we are on our final minutes here in our session. I just want to say, if you want to reach out, you can reach out to Sune and I on LinkedIn. And This slide deck is going to be on the event site, so you could actually click on the links here. Now, also on Twitter, we are very active on Twitter. It's the place to be. And if you are crazy about endpoint management and tips and tricks, you could go in the right and see on the MEM Tips and Tricks YouTube channel. I am trying to give you the best tips and tricks on certain subjects, and you could very much I really like feedback, so you could write me an email on feedback@memtipsandtricks.tech if you want me to cover a certain a technical area. Now, and for the final slide, we are ready to have your questions if you have any. Otherwise, I just want again to thank all our sponsors, Recast, Software Central, MedSys, MindCore. We have our gold next Think, Acronis, Phyton, and of course, Microsoft. Thank you so much for listening.
We have one question. And it's from Morten. Are there any kind of backup of the group policies if you were to accidentally delete all group policy with a script? And no, not to my knowledge, there is not. You need to import the GPOs one more time to group policy analytics. So hope that answers your question.
Yes, and we see some names here in the chats that we know. Nice to see you here in our session, and thanks for being here with us. So Todd is writing, Sune. So with what you are presenting here, does it eliminate buying the policy pack solution from Netrix is offering? Are you aware of that policy pack? I haven't heard about it.
Me neither.
But Todd, our main focus is using the Microsoft stack. So if you think it can help you migrating some policies, go ahead. But I really would encourage you to go through the process that Sune just showed you. It's actually not that hard. Not in the real world. And keep in mind, it's not one-to-one. You need to migrate what you need.
Only what you need, yes.
And we have another question from Simon Raj. Are there any workarounds at this time to save the time of creating each and every setting manual as part of the migration? And I can take that as well. Well, yes, there is on the roadmap, there is coming a button where you have the possibility to migrate all of the supported MDM settings into settings catalog. So you will have a very, very easy way of transitioning your GPOs to Intune. So the only thing that you miss once you have migrated them is how you're going to assign them. So you need to find out how you're going to assign either to the device or to users. And to elaborate on that, there is a whole cheat sheet on Microsoft Docs telling you what the CSP applies for, if it is a user CSP or if it is a device CSP.
Yes. The group policy migration readiness report will also show you the scope the settings original applied to. So a setting could go to the computer scope or the user scope. So that will also be in the migration readiness report.
Yeah, and for those who didn't attend to Per Larsen's session, I just quickly want to go through that. So you saw the list of priorities, what policy to use and what not, and settings catalog was on top. And that's why in the settings catalog, you will have some settings saying This is users. And then you will have someone that is not mentioning users. The difference on these are that the user one is actually going to the user. So if you apply that to the users, that's a good way to do it. If there is not a user in there and you apply it to users as well, then what is going to happen? You're going to leverage a device-specific setting that applies when the user log on to the device. So that specific setting is a per device setting. That means the next user that does not have this policy assigned will still be targeted by it because it was a device policy. So you see the point? That is why you need to think about the design. Hope it makes sense. And if no more questions, thank you for your comments. Thank you for being here at the session. I really would recommend you to look at one of our next sessions. Now, in room 1, we have Windows 365 Roadmap plus Deep Dive with Christian Brinkhoff. Now, Brinkhoff is mentoring Sune because Sune is the MVP of Windows 365. And he's also going to moderate that session. If you are crazy about community tools, then go to room 2, where Ronnie Peterson and Jørgen Nilsson is going to talk about all sorts of tooling from the community. If you are listening to endpoint analytics, then you go to room 3, where Avi Prasad, program manager from Microsoft on the endpoint analytics, is going to speak. So let's have 8 minutes to have a sip and see you in all the other sessions. Have a great evening.
Have a great evening, guys. Bye.